Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Critters. My name is Laura Joseph, and I'm here with the lovely Dr. Deb Jones.
Good morning, everybody.
Yes, our returning guest. And so Deb has been with us here probably at least, I don't even know. You've been on Coffee with the Critters at least four times,
maybe.
Yeah. And at the center more than that.
Yeah, I'm stalking you.
So that we just got the notification that
we're on.
Yeah, so
Look at
see
us.
people starting to join down here. We got 4
Hi, people.
so far, and then here they come.
Oh, and you can see where they're writing, where they're.
Yep. So you can see Eva.
What they say. Hi.
And Mary.
Okay, I got it.
Yep. You can see them as they join, and you can see them as they comment. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So we're gonna have an interesting conversation today.
Well, I hope so.
We're prepared, right?
Yeah. Well, no. Not really. We have some very vague ideas of what we might talk about. We have no clue as to where it's actually going to go.
And that's what's fun.
Typical. This is what we do.
It's true live conversation.
Yes, it is.
Good morning, everybody.
Good
Hey,
morning.
There's Dana, Diane, Krista, Sandy, Nancy,
Hi,
Adrian,
everybody.
Jill, Susie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, so here they
Like
come.
crazy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So thank you, everybody, from all the different time zones that, especially if you get up early on purpose to watch us. So before we get started, my name is Laura Joseph. In case you don't know, my name is Laura Joseph, owner of the Animal Behavior Center, where we go live with Coffee with the Critters. It's our episodic content that we do a live stream every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, as long as I'm not traveling, or as long as my guest is not willing to get up at
that early.
6, 5, 4, 3 in the morning. So the Animal Behavior Center is an international educational center where we we teach people across the world. I don't compete with Susie.
Just let her go.
Let her have her 2 cents. Where we teach people all across the world about living, loving, learning with animals using applied behavior analysis and positive reinforcement. And you can find out more about that in our services through our website at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. So if you don't want to miss a post or a live stream, be sure to click. I know it's opposite.
It is.
Click on your left
Yeah.
and turn on notifications. Click up at top in the right, click on turn on notifications. On the left is where you'll see our upcoming schedule. And I will be traveling, so I will be taking you with me. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get Deb and I on the screen. Get this off the screen. Hey,
here we are.
Good morning, everybody.
Wow.
So I got to
Lots of people coming in.
Yeah, there's Therese and Lee and Shelly.
Hi, Shelly.
Hey, Jennifer,
Hi,
Barbara,
Jennifer.
Wanda, Susan, Daphne.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got a full house this morning. Well, it's getting fuller. All right, let's get started. You are. So for those of you that don't know, this is my friend, my very good friend, Dr. Deb Jones.
Hi, everybody.
Yep. And I really think, I know I say this jokingly, but I mean it. I really think we should start a morning talk show.
Does it have to be in the morning would be my first question. If it could be like an afternoon talk show, maybe. But we always have so much fun when we do this.
I know.
And it's just what we do anyway. When we get together, we just start talking and one thing goes into another. And the next thing you know, we think we're fascinating. And we think, don't joke on your coffee. Mm-hmm. We think it's interesting. So hopefully you guys will think it's interesting too. We're pretty sure it is.
But we never run out of topics.
No, never, because we both have a love of anything that has to do with behavior. Mm-hmm. So, and any animal. I mean, put those two things together. And so we have this huge range of things that we can always talk about.
Yeah.
And you always have something different or unusual, because who knows what you've been training. And so
I never know what I'm
or what's going to be here when we show up. So that always, to me, is fascinating because most of my experience has been with dogs. So I've gotten to train a lot of other species, but with limited amount of time. Whereas you have a ton of different species, and some of them that you've trained for years and years. So
Yeah.
it's always interesting to me to see the differences, which is kind of what got us into talking, I think, first of all, about doing the workshop together.
Yes.
Was the idea that you have seen so many different species, and while we say,
it doesn't last long.
Yeah. While we say that in behavioral psychology, we say training is the same no matter the subject, I think that can be a little bit misleading because it does matter who your subject is. And it is going to really change what you do and how you approach it, even though the basic principles are still the same.
Yeah.
So I think people sometimes are confused and think, you can train a whale the same way you train the porcupine, the same way you train the hawk. It's like yes and no. And that's where I think we started talking about the idea of a workshop where we could look at the similarities and talk about the differences.
Yeah.
And look at those and maybe get some hands-on work with the different species, which is what I always find fascinating.
And I think like yesterday we were picking out and talking about the different species of animals we're going to be working with. And I think that's going to be important. So, if we talk about, you may have expectations on what you're going to do with this particular species or animal, individual.
Exactly.
But you should be ready to be creative and
change.
Yes.
Change at a moment's notice. Yeah, we were talking about some demonstrations and some work with Cello, the roller pigeon.
Yep.
And he loves to work. But you never know on any particular day, what you're going to get. So we can have a plan as to what we think he's going to do and what we can incorporate the people who come to the workshop and get them to be able to work with him. But it's all up in the air until it's up to the animal.
Sure.
To decide what he's going to actually do on that particular day. So that's an interesting thing. But I think it shows a lot of respect for the animal.
Absolutely.
We would not, just because we're doing a demo, try to force you to do this thing.
And I think a lot of times, we have an agenda for the workshop, which we're going to stick to. But the animal's going to be out there with us, and we'll just boom, here comes this one. Now let's start.
Got to go with the flow a little bit there as well. It's easy. I'm the one who always wants a plan. And I want to know 15 minutes we're doing this, 20 minutes we're doing this. Is just the way my brain works and what makes me comfortable. I'm kind of a control freak here a little bit. And you're just the opposite. You're like so easy going. Oh, well, maybe we'll pull out this animal and work on that. And I'm like, you don't know exactly what we're going to do. And it's scary to me.
Yeah.
But it's a good scary. And it's something I should do more of. And I should, be able to just kind of go with the flow with what happens.
And I think that's where we complement each other.
I hope so.
You know what I mean?
That's the plan. So
sometimes I listen to you and I was like, wow, she is so organized. This is comfort.
Yeah, I made you write it all down yesterday. So we spent yesterday afternoon working through our agenda on everything. No, it wasn't. You did great with it. We made our notes. We have a general idea. We still have to fill in all the blanks. But I think we have a plan. We have a system that's working for us.
Yes.
And that'll work for this. And I think it'll be the same thing. It'll be okay. We know what we plan, but it could be open to a lot of things. It's open, of course, to what animals are here and which animals are going to work and what they're going to do in a particular time. It's also open and depending on the attendees and what they need at any particular time. So their questions, their issues, their challenges, the level of comfort they have with certain things. So we may hop back and forth depending on what the people who are here need.
Sure.
Yeah.
And kind of let the workshop shape, the attendees shape where we're gonna go to.
Yeah, because people are asking me if is it beginner, is it more advanced? And I'm like, it's everything, because advanced is just beginner stuff done really, really well.
Right.
And so there's no difference in content. It's just, how much more challenge, how much more complexity do we add? Just like shaping. How much more complexity do we add?
Yeah. And a lot of times I'll see somebody in the workshop and I'll be like, this one needs practice on timing. Come here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you may be really good with this species. Now try it with this one.
Exactly.
Because you get ready to change.
Yeah.
Be ready
that's our plan is to we say challenge, but challenge in a good way. Challenge the people who are here. Not challenge so that you'll fail ever, because that's not what we do.
Right.
But challenge so that you'll learn and stretch and gain a new skill of some sort. That's our goal. So we have high hopes and lofty goals for what we're going to accomplish this when our weekend comes up here. And I think we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see several people on here that are already attending.
Excellent.
Signed up for the workshop.
Oh, good. I'm excited.
But that's what brings us to our topic today, which is the topic of the importance of genetics. We were talking about this last night at dinner.
Okay.
At nature versus nurture, where you were mentioning this can be a controversial topic, and that has, like, for years been controversial. Do you agree or no?
It's always controversial, and the whole idea of nature nurture is with our subject, whoever it is, whatever animal we're working with, they come to us with their nature already. So they've got their genetics, they've got their temperament, which is sort of like saying personality for animals, kind of these core qualities that are their temperament. And if you think of it in humans, so that we think of temperament as things like being introverted or extroverted. So being outgoing and sociable, or not so much outgoing and sociable, as something you're born with. It doesn't develop over time, but you already have a tendency to go one way or the other. And the same is true of animals. They all have these tendencies that they're born with, and we can't deny that. We can't go back to what we were talking about at dinner last night. What John Watson said was that I could take a baby and make him anything I want him to be. And I'm like, dude, no. No, dude, no, that just isn't even possible. What are you thinking? And I would wonder, but we know he had a child.
I know. I looked up some of the videos last night.
Okay, the little Albert. So if you look up John Watson and little Albert, you'll probably find some YouTube videos. I know there's some old footage out there of him doing behavioral experiments with his son. Right? And of course, at the time, this was okay to do because there weren't a lot of rules about ethics and what you could do to other human beings. But he basically was conditioning this child to be afraid of things. We would never do that now.
I know, because I was watching the videos last night. I was like, why would you want to do this? Do you know?
Yeah. So John Watson is one of the big names in behavioral psychology. If you go back like to the 1920s and 30s and beyond, Watson comes up along with B.F. Skinner. We all know B.F. Skinner. We don't think about John Watson so much. But Watson was one of the big names, and he really overstated the idea that we can set up the environment to change our subject. You can't, sure, we have an effect, but you can't override what you're born with.
Yes.
And that's kind of the key. And as you know, every subject is not the same.
Right.
It's not like we have that blank slate idea, the tabula rasa, or blank slate idea. That's not true at all. Everybody comes already kind of preloaded with ways that they're likely to behave. All we can do is make some tiny little shift, maybe one direction or the other. So if you're over on this side being introverted, you're over on this side being extroverted. If you're born introverted, I can't move you over here. I can probably move you here, closer. But with stress, you're going to move back to your original tendency every time. So we have to admit that. As behaviorists, which is what I was trained as a behaviorist, we just can't we can't make these big statements that we can change everything, because we can't change everything.
Yep. And Adrienne brings up a pretty good point here. Herding dogs breeds are a great example of nature being a huge part of their behavioral makeup.
Oh, yes, they are.
Which is,
yeah. And what we sometimes see is we've bred these animals, like we've bred specific types of dogs to be able to perform a certain job. And you keep selectively breeding those that are better. So you breed the better herding dog to the better herding dog. You get a variety in the puppies, but you pick out the best ones and you breed them to other good ones. And so over time, you get these lines of dogs that are really good at that thing. But genetics also carries along a whole lot of other baggage with it. So you get that herding dog that then you get a lot of high level of arousal. And so you get chasing after moving objects, any moving object.
So keep that in mind when you want to reproduce and have a baby in your house. Now you've got a moving object running around on the floor.
Exactly. And people will be stunned that their herding dog is nipping at the child, or the kids' friends come over and they're all running around in the backyard, and you want to let the dog out to play with them, and they're biting them and chasing them and, biting them in the butt.
Yeah. There's a story there.
There's a story there. Somebody got bitten. A little bit. Just a little bit. But it's a herding dog thing. It just, boom, it kicks in. So.
And the dog is just doing.
Yeah, they're just doing what nature tells them to do. They're not thinking about it. They're not choosing it. And that's true of all these genetic things. They're not doing it on purpose. This is just what they're made like.
And then, this is something I was thinking about in the shower before the live stream. I'm like, how are we going to do this?
You're always thinking about things at the last minute of the shower.
I have aqua notes in my shower. So
do you really?
I do. Volunteer Maddie Split bought it for me.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's pretty impressive.
I'll make a note to buy you some because you're gonna love them, and then you're gonna love it and you're gonna hate it because you're gonna be like, oh, I got an idea.
You always have good ideas in the shower.
I know.
That's pretty amazing.
It's the time where you're alone.
Mm-hmm.
I have good ideas when I'm in the shower and when I'm blow drying my hair because I can't hear anything else.
So we have to capture those whenever you have them because it's easy to forget.
I know.
Yeah, you step out of the shower and they're gone.
I know.
Anyway.
So what I was thinking in the shower was, say, for example, the herding dog nips the kids in the backyards. Then the human labels come out.
Now it's an aggressive dog.
Now, Mom, Fido's biting me.
Yes.
And then Mom starts thinking we have an aggressive dog.
Yes. And when
and we don't.
No.
We have a herding dog doing what they do.
Exactly. And we brought this dog into an environment that doesn't usually give it an outlet for what it needs to do. So it takes the first opportunity it sees.
Right.
And also in a basic family, it doesn't get the amount of training that they really want and need. So they're kind of left to their own devices. And whenever we leave an animal to their own devices, they revert back to their nature. And they're going to do things that we call problem behaviors. They're just behaviors that are in the wrong context. They're doing something that in another context would be great. If I'm herding and you're out there, being kind of, I would say hard on the sheep, but if you're out there being very strong with the sheep about where they should go, that's a good thing. Not so good when they're doing it with your kids.
Right. And that comes into play a lot when people bring these beautiful exotic parrots into their home. You were saying yesterday, there's a cockatoo right there. How do people have cockatoos in apartments? And I said, they usually don't. They may start out that way, but it's not going to last too long.
No, because it's just so inappropriate for what they need. It's hard for me to even imagine being here where you have everything set up so that it's as comfortable and natural for them as possible, and they get all this enrichment and all this training. But when you don't have any of that, and you just decide you're going to keep this animal as a companion of some sort, and I'm not sure why sometimes, because if you don't do so much with them, they're going to, again, kind of revert back to nature, and also they're going to develop a lot of behaviors based on boredom.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else.
And with parrots, those behaviors based on boredom can turn into abnormal repetitive behaviors in the form of screaming, often leads to feather destructive behaviors, self-injurious behaviors, such as mutilation. It can get pretty nasty.
Fast. Fast. I'm kind of amazed by how quickly these things will develop. It's like you leave them for a couple of days and you don't do anything, and lots of bad stuff starts to happen.
An idle mind is the devil's playground.
Heard that somewhere before. That's too funny. Oh my God.
Jen says
enrichment.
Enrichment is so important. Yeah, I met Jen down at PPG in Tampa several years ago.
Yes, it is.
She's a dog trainer as well. Okay, you were just saying something about.
I know, I have an idea.
This is we
do this a lot.
I know, but this is the fun thing about it.
Both of us lose the thread of what were we talking about again?
Well, you had mentioned natural environments. Okay. So, and when we talk about enrichment, natural in captivity, natural is good, but you've got to go beyond natural as in form of, and I'm just talking from my experience with exotics. Natural is not going to be enough because an umbrella cockatoo living in Northwest Ohio is anything but natural.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, I mean, I can provide them flight, which I do. I do provide them branches, different things they would have in the wild, but that's not going to be enough in captivity because so much of what they need, such as, see a lovely turkey vulture.
Oh my
Isn't that
gosh,
beautiful?
that is amazing. She just came right there.
She's watching
Beautiful.
us in our cage. You're taking away, I don't mean this anything bad, flight. If there's any type of migration pending on the bird.
Yeah.
Got a cockatoo running in circles down here, which is the first. What are you doing, Coco? I do want to reinforce that because I haven't seen it, and it's a way to expend energy.
Yeah.
You're taking away breeding. Nesting is huge, and you see here how huge
that's like
is.
A constant that you're trying to find alternatives so that they don't get into nesting type behaviors.
That's a natural behavior, and you don't start interrupting or redirecting the nesting if they don't have a breeding partner, which we don't hear. They often turn to you or another animal in the room as a potential mate. And then natural behavior starts kicking in. Stay away from me and my partner.
Yeah, so now you've got like a resource guarding kind of thing going on here.
Absolutely.
And that, again, like I said, happens so fast. It's like, boom, all of a sudden, now there's this problem. And if people don't know the signs or aren't paying much attention, before you know it, you've got these full-blown issues. And I say they're problems, but again, they're not really problems. They're just not right in this particular situation. It's not ideal. It's not helpful to the animal. It's not very good for them for whatever reason. But we have to give them something. We have to give them alternatives of some sort if we're not going to encourage certain behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's often the problem. People just want them to stop. Stop doing what you're doing. That's all we want. We identify the behavior and say, let's make it stop. And that's all people think about. It's like, but you've got to go back a little bit and look at all of the causes, the antecedents, and the ABC part of behavioral analysis. What's leading to this behavior? That's where we need to start.
And with saying that, as you guys hear me say a lot, like Deb said, people just want the undesired behavior. Well, undesired to who? Serving a purpose for that animal.
Yeah.
The undesired the inconvenient behavior for me.
Yes,
I want that to stop. So, and a lot of times people are like, I just want that to stop. And we know in order to change an undesired behavior, you need to replace it with another. And that's the other part of the equation that the people forget to add in, because if I just want that to stop, it may stop momentarily.
Yeah.
But it often results to other behavior issues.
It blows up on you almost all the time. Yeah.
Frustration, anxiety, extinction bursts.
Oh, extinction bursts are the worst. Yeah, and we get away with an awful lot with pet dogs. We can be really sloppy in training, and we can just tell them to stop doing things, and sometimes they do. But that still doesn't mean you don't have those side effects coming on. Yeah, I can yell at my dog and say, go lay down. And if my dog's been trained to lay down, they probably will. But that didn't solve the earlier problem. Really, it's a figure out what's leading up to this. What are the antecedents? Why am I seeing this behavior that I really don't like to see? And what can I do to change it in some way? What can I do to alter it? An example, some of you may know that we have a new Sheltie puppy in the house, little Pixel. Okay. Pixel, he's a little tiny thing.
I told you.
You tell me. I'm like, no, we're not getting a puppy till next year.
The last time she was here. Yeah.
No, this is not my puppy. It's Judy Keller's puppy. But I end up spending a lot of time with him and doing a lot of the training with whatever puppy we have.
It's like you're having pretty much fun with him.
Puppies are fun. Who doesn't love puppies? I mean, they're a lot of fun. They're a lot of work, but they're also a lot of fun. And they're a lot of work because if you put in all the work, like for the first 3-4 months, if you really do it right, it pays off for years afterwards.
And that's, go ahead.
She has something. You can say it.
That's the time where people, the label that really, what do I want to say? where people like, oh, I'm saying you're missing the boat when people label that the terrible twos. I was like, no, that's the learning.
Yes.
Learning.
Yes, they're learning a lot there. And they're showing us with their behavior whether or not we've done our job well. If we are seeing those inconvenient behaviors happening, they're telling us something important. It means I've missed out on something that I need to work on. I've missed out on something that I need to address. Now, some of you know Shelties. Those of you who know dogs know what is the number one issue that people report with Shelties. Most of you don't have to think twice about that. That number one issue is barking. Shelties bark like they breathe. They don't think about it. They don't even realize they're doing it. I'm convinced. They're moving, they're barking. They're excited, they're barking. They're alarmed,
they're breathing, they're barking.
They're awake, they're barking. So there's a lot of barking. I don't like barking. I don't care for useless random barking. I don't mind barking if there's a reason for it. But when I can't find the reason, it's just become a bad habit. And barking. You got it, Adrian, very quickly just becomes a habit. And once it gets combined with things, it never goes. You can't separate it and get rid of it. It's always going to be there.
Are you talking about conditioned reinforcers? Are you or no?
Not yet.
Okay. This is why we work so well together.
Yeah, we're getting there.
We take science, education, content, and mix it with a lot of humor.
Yeah, exactly. That's our plan. I don't know. We think we're hilarious.
Oh, I think we're hilarious. High five.
Oh, God. Oh, my Lord. You are such a dork.
I know.
Which is why I like it. Exactly. So, back to barking Shelties here. Okay. So, Shelties are barking just like they're breathing. Now, with this new puppy, I have an opportunity here to reinforce a ton of quiet with different activities. So, for example, when the dogs run outside, they run out the back door. That's always an exciting moment. And what happens? The puppy chases after the blah. And okay, can I do something there? Can I find a way to change that? Because why is he barking? He's excited. He's got high arousal levels. So there's going to be barking because of that. So my simple solution right now, which I think is pretty brilliant, of course, my solution to many things right now is throw cookies on the floor. That's actually a cookie scatter, is a solution, believe it or not, or an interruption to many things. So before I open the door for him, I throw a handful of cookies down on the floor, his little kibble. Open the door, the other dogs run out, he eats his kibble, moment has passed, he goes outside, everybody's calmer. So it's like just that little thing, changing his arousal level before the activity. Because if the arousal level is real high, like right when they get out of their crates and get to go outside, it's real high. So just having 5 or 6 cookies, now he's okay, I'm busy with this activity. It's a good substitute, and it also changes how he feels. So by changing how he feels, then it changes the subsequent behavior. He doesn't have to bark anymore.
Sure. So the reinforcer behind the bark, which is all the dogs running out together,
yes,
is no longer there.
Exactly.
And you didn't have to punish anything, you just redirected.
Exactly. Many years ago, somebody, I won't give any names here, but somebody who has been in Shelties for 10,000 years, I heard her give advice to people who had her puppies. And she said, what I do with my Sheltie puppies, when I open the back door for them to go out, I have a big stick, and if somebody barks, I smack them with the stick. Okay, that was her solution to solve the barking problem. Now, will it solve the barking problem? It might, but I don't want to hit my puppy with a stick.
Well, what other behavior are you creating?
Yeah, fear of sticks. That's basically, and
fear of the back
fear
door.
Of me. Yeah, and the whole situation. And if you have a very sensitive dog, one time that puppy probably won't bark again. But to me, that is not worth it. The potential fallout. Plus, I don't want to be mean to animals. That's not why I work with them.
Sure.
It would make me very uncomfortable to do something like that. Even if I was guaranteed it would work, I'd be like, there's got to be another way. Because for me, that would be punishing me as well as punishing the animal. And so I definitely don't want to do something like that. I want to find a way around it.
Yeah.
And with positive reinforcement type training, there's always a way.
Yeah.
There is always another way. People will say, I've tried everything. It's like, no, there are always other things to try.
Yeah. And also, there's Dr. Pat Anderson. Yay.
Hi, Pat.
Yeah. Who says barking also is communication?
It is communication, though with Shelties, it's a lot of, hey, 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 hey.
Let's go.
Yeah. So we do want to discourage it, but we have to find a way to do that doesn't harm your relationship with the animal or upset the animal in it. And so they're finding alternatives.
Yeah.
And we talked about incompatible behaviors. We were talking about that yesterday, that we're going to talk about in the workshop, differential reinforcement of incompatible or alternate behaviors and things like that.
Well, a couple things I want to talk about. I want to give a correlation to your barking Shelties. Excited.
Okay.
We have that here with numerous animals, but
Yeah.
one would be the cockatoos. We take them out into the center to fly. It's an exciting time. There's your barking Sheltie. You've heard the excited cockatoo. It's
loud.
It's loud. You can have somebody stand in front of you. You can sit there and talk and you can't hear each other. So instead of letting them go and fly and wah, wah, that's exciting, which can lead to overstimulation. Overstimulation can lead to a bite. Seems to be something
you're seeing
common
that
with
whole
cockatoos.
pattern coming. You see it early enough to do something about it.
So when we go out, now I carry them out and I'm like, okay, 1, 2, 3, and they focus on me and then they take off. And instead of that scream, they give the Yahoo! And so now
cute.
I have Yahooing cockatoos flying. And then I also bridge and reinforce eye contact when they're turning in flight and looking at me.
Okay.
So and I'm like, good. And then I'll deliver Yahoo! And then they'll respond Yahoo! And it takes something which could be real annoying to the residents around us and turns into who's going to complain about a lot of people screaming Yahoo!
That's true.
Animals screaming Yahoo!
Better than some of the other options.
Yeah.
And you've managed to insert yourself into the behavior and make yourself an important part of it and be able to reinforce that, which is better than leaving them just completely to their own devices. That's when they get into trouble a lot of times.
So we're functioning as a flock.
You're giving them some structure
and
giving them the behavior you want them to do as opposed to what you don't want them to do, which I notice you also tend to reinforce a lot quieter vocalizations on all of them, that you'll respond to that when you ignore the louder vocalizations that you don't want and don't like.
Yeah, and I'm surprised by not just saying Yahoo! That we don't have some somersaulting cockatoos behind us, but he's busy foraging.
Which is awesome.
For his breakfast.
They are. I'm afraid to say that they're being quiet because I will curse us. Shh. I know. I'm thinking it, and that might be bad enough, but I'm afraid to say it.
Yeah, so Bailey says, it's teamwork. You're getting ready to meet Bailey at the workshop.
Excellent.
I met her in Utah.
Good.
She now lives out east. She specializes in using applied behavior analysis with special education students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Fabulous mind.
Principals are the same. Yeah.
The attendees that are coming, just the conversations we're going to have alone.
I know.
Is going to be fun.
Sylvia's
going to be here.
We're allowing a lot of
Shelley's
time
going to be here.
Talk.
Yeah.
And socialize. We always allow a lot of time for that.
Yeah.
That's the main point.
One thing that you commented on about, which is a part of our workshop as well, is reinforcers.
Yes, a big part.
Big part, because there's a lot of, even the volunteers here have told me, I thought I understood reinforcement, but now I'm getting into this and I'm lost. I don't know where to go. Reinforcers are many. They're all around us all the time.
And we don't control them all. That's one of the problems that we sometimes run into. Yeah, there's a lot of complexity and sophistication to understanding reinforcers really well.
Rico. He's back.
He's watching.
He's going to make his appearance on Coffee with the Critters.
There, he always has to. Yeah, so we, when we start talking about reinforcers, it seems like such a simple thing, something that my subject will work to obtain, and something that I can control so I can apply it and take it away, appropriately. But it just, from that point on, depends on your species, depends on their natural tendencies, kind of back to nature, because we were talking about animals that your proximity to them, your distance is a problem.
Yes.
That you might have a reinforcer they really want, but you're also punishing them by approaching them or
by just being in the environment.
So that's that's going to be real problematic. How do you manage that when you can't even get close enough to reinforce?
Exactly.
And so
that's going to be a big part of our workshop as well.
Yeah, because there are a number of species. We're lucky with, again, most dogs are so forgiving and easy in so many ways, just in general as a species, because you can get away with a lot of nonsense and you can still train the dog. But when you start looking at some of the exotics in particular, you make mistakes, you're going to pay.
Sure.
It's not going to be pretty.
And sometimes you working with exotics, yeah, I mean, that's why I love working with exotics, because just to me, there's such a wide variety and they're such fabulous teachers. You make a mistake, boom, you're going to see it right now.
Hopefully.
And you may be able to make it once.
Yeah.
Don't do it again.
Yeah,
You know?
and the idea that one mistake can have a pretty big effect on your training. We talked about this a little bit yesterday too,
Yep.
because I said in general, I'm not worried. For example, if I mistakenly mark something, like I clicked something I didn't mean, I always still reinforce. We've had this discussion back and forth. I always still give the cookie because it was my mistake, not the animals. They don't know, and withholding the treat.
That was a pretty good conversation we had yesterday.
Yeah. Withholding the treat, I think at that point doesn't mean much. They don't learn much other than maybe you're not as consistent as you ought to be. But then you have animals that learn in single instances. We get some one trial learning, like
Pointing at a pig.
Yeah. And then you're in much more trouble if you make that mistake. You make it once, now you're going way down the wrong path. I still think, though, that you might as well feed them because it doesn't matter. Yeah,
because we were talking yesterday, and this is what I like about working with you, is sometimes we have different viewpoints, but then we sit there and start talking, and it comes to light that, no, we really...
Yeah, it's just we were thinking about it in different ways,
and
using different words to talk about it. And I know you said when you came to Fenzer Camp, and I talked about that in one of my presentations, and I said always, always, always give the primary reinforcer, even if you didn't mean to mark, and you're sitting there going, oh, I don't do that. And so that was something we kind of talked a little bit about, why you don't, or why it bothers you. And then it comes to light because of the different species we're working with.
Yeah.
It can make a bigger impact, but I still think the mark is the thing that made the impact.
Sure. And that's what we came to the conclusion yesterday, that even if you bridge and do not deliver the reinforcer, enough of a reinforcer may have been there just through the bridge.
Yeah, because it's a secondary reinforcer, so it's already happened there.
So whether you think you didn't reinforce it or not, it doesn't deter the animal's behavior.
And we can never take it back. That's the thing once we do. And I was actually thinking about the fact this makes it hard for people because we don't want to make mistakes in training. We want to be perfect, and there's no perfect. We're all going to make mistakes in our training all the time. So don't let perfect stop you from training. You know, you will make mistakes. I've made more mistakes than I can possibly count with different animals. And usually there's a way to dig yourself back out of it.
Yeah.
Just don't dig a deeper hole is what I always tell people. If you know you're running into trouble, stop. Think it over. Talk to somebody.
Absolutely. And sometimes people keep going. I was like, you're just making a bigger mess.
Yeah.
That you're going to have to
Making the same mistake over and over is a problem.
Yeah.
It's like if I do it once or twice, usually we can find a way around that.
Do you know Daphne?
I know Daphne's name.
She's a dog trainer out of Washington.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm leaving her comment up here because it deserves attention. I think more people need to be humbled by working with different animals.
Yes.
You want to make yourself a better learner of behavior, a better learner of learning from the environment, work with numerous animals.
Yes.
Because what
agree.
works so well on one that's a reinforcer could be a boom positive punisher for the one right next door to it.
Exactly.
So it causes you to be really creative. Think about your approach. And like you just said, if you find yourself in a mess, stop it. Ask the animal a behavior it already knows and just stop and walk away before you create a bigger mess.
The idea that you have to end on success is not true. There's not really any scientific evidence that it has an impact on learning. Just end. You know, what I do, my typical thing is, again, cookie scatter. If I need to stop, I throw a handful of cookies and I give a release cue, which is, okay, all done, whatever. I usually tell them all done. Throw some cookies, in the session.
Yep.
Regroup, think about it, and go back. Don't just keep trying to work your way through it when you can see that it's not going the direction you want.
And with saying that, because you just said that, and I'm thinking about that, because I don't think we've talked about that before. But and I sit there like if I'm screwing up, and I'm just like, if I ask once and I don't get the behavior, then I ask twice, I'm stopping.
Yeah.
Because I'm depending on the animal. So a particular animal may be forgiving, but this one is going to be like, I am so frustrated. You're going to reinforce a behavior you don't want.
Yeah.
A lot of times I will go ahead and ask a behavior the other animal already knows, such as just target.
Something simple.
But a lot of times, I mean, this is where it's an art, because sometimes I don't even want to ask another behavior, even if the animal knows, because the animal is so thoroughly confused or frustrated at this point that I may get an undesired behavior because I've already taught the animal. The animal's
in that
confused, and then
state.
Why would I give you that behavior when?
Yeah, and then you're messing up a second behavior that you thought was pretty solid. Yeah,
which you could probably poison the cue.
Yeah, it definitely could poison the cue. So that's why I found just kind of tossing some cookies, it settles them down. It gives them something positive to focus on, gives you a chance to kind of gracefully exit the session and just get out of it so that you can think about it. I'm all for ending sessions, and that is very, very hard for people. People don't want to end a training session. They want to keep going until they see whatever their version of success is. But when you do that, you are less likely to get where you want to go than if you stop frequently, reassess what you're doing, think about it, come back with a better plan. So I think people make that mistake often. They just don't want to end. They say, okay, I'm going to train for 20 minutes, and I would right away do that. Oh no, let's do one. Let's do 1 minute of training, reassess what happened. Let's do another minute, and cutting down those. Over the years, I've made my training sessions shorter and shorter, because you don't get as much effectiveness out of a longer session. It's not better.
Yeah.
All the good stuff happens in the first minute, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I want to throw this in here too, because we collaborate with the Autism Model School, and fabulous. They just asked me to give their commencement speech Friday. That was what an honor. Yeah. And we're going to be doing a lot more work, but there is, we have let's see who just said this. Donald just said, when it comes to positive reinforcement, we must think outside the box. The animal or person is always the one that decides the reinforcer and always decides the punisher. And a lot of times I see people get stuck in this whirlwind of going in directions you don't want because this reinforcer worked yesterday. Or this reinforcer worked 2 minutes ago.
And it's not working anymore.
Yeah.
And being able to know that fast and change what you're doing. If this isn't working, now my animal no longer wants the food that I'm offering, and I thought they did. What are my options here? My option is, in this session, take a break, think about what it is I need to change, come back with my better reinforcer and my better plan. What I don't do, and what I caution people about, is up the value of the reinforcer in a session.
Yeah.
Because I think what you're then also teaching is, you teach an animal, just wait, because something better might come along. And I don't necessarily want to do that. I want to start out with what I'm going to use.
So it's the animal training.
Yeah. Doesn't that happen all the time?
Yeah. And I don't mind.
Train us.
Yeah. And I don't mind because I'm teamwork. Right, Rico? It's like, yeah, what are we doing?
It's like, yeah, you guys are talking an awful lot. Nothing fun is happening.
But when we're talking about, I was just thinking about nature versus nurture. Topic we were just talking about that I was like, we need to go. Hi.
I know, we keep losing our threads so
easily. We're talking about the nature, genetics of the species. Also, when like a lot of animals that I work with, I haven't worked with this animal before, and I like doing that because I'm like, I do not know what that means.
Yeah.
So, and they're communicating with us through their behavior. If I don't know what that behavior means, I'm going to step back and just observe how they're interacting with their environment, what things they're moving towards, and why, and how. And what things they're moving away from. And that's where I just wanted to talk about, we're talking about species, and I want to talk about the individual, this particular individual.
Because it's not all species, every individual in that species is the same. There's a huge wide variation. in any species. And you work with birds, which have such a huge variation in how they're going to respond to anything or react to anything. Dogs are the same way. They're very different. We might say, okay, universally, we can use food as a positive reinforcer because in general, most animals will work for it. But that's not even true because we know that some subjects will not work for food or will only work for certain food or will only work for it in certain contexts or are too stressed to work for food. So we have to figure all that out before we can do anything.
Sure.
It's like this whole stage of exploration of learning the animal before you can start any sort of behavior change with them. If you don't know them, if you just go in going, okay, I've got what I believe to be the correct reinforcer, I'm training you now, the animal's probably going to go, nah, I don't think you are.
Yeah.
This is not going to work. And you always, I know you always do that. You just spend time observing whatever animal is new to you. Even if it's a species you know, it's still a different animal.
Sure.
And you have to get to learn about them.
And I heard somebody give a great correlation there. Like, okay, so we're working with, their correlation was we're working with children. Okay, so today we're working with Sarah. So all Sarahs are the same.
Yeah.
Is that how we're going to approach this child? This Sarah is like that Sarah, like that Sarah.
Exactly.
This Sarah is so much different than that Sarah.
Sadly, some people do, but they're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very bad approach. That to assume just because you're of this species, and maybe I've had experience with one or two others of this species, that you must be just like them.
Yeah.
Because we know that there's such a wide range of individual tendencies. We see it in dogs all the time. All dogs are not made the same by a long shot. We look for things in puppies, though I have to admit lately I just don't look too much. I just take the one I like. But we used to test them. We used to do temperament testing on them. So you can look at a puppy at like 6 or 7 weeks. And some people will tell you that temperament testing doesn't hold up with adult dogs, that you don't get what as an adult what you think you see like at 6 or 7 or 8 weeks. But I have not found that to be the case for myself. I know there aren't any good scientific studies on it. So there's no evidence that temperament testing is useful. But I always found it to personally be useful because I could test puppies and then I could see them throughout their lives. I could look at them later in life and see how they actually turned out. Not just mine, but all the puppies in a litter. I could follow a lot of them and know what happened. And there were core things that I could see even as young as 6 weeks old that held true, no matter who the puppy went to, no matter what the environment they ended up in was like. So one of the key things that I would always look for in puppies, and I think this is probably true for all species, is resilience, the ability to bounce back from unpleasant experiences. I think that is so strongly genetic, that you are just a resilient individual. In general, a mildly unpleasant thing happens to you, and you get over it quickly and move on. Or a mildly unpleasant thing happens to you, and it just ruins your day, maybe your week. And I think humans very much have this thing going on too.
Yeah.
And I think that's strongly genetic. Can we teach resilience then? Is the other question. Can I teach my animal to get over things? Or are they always going to revert back to that temperamental tendency? And in my experience alone, I'm not claiming this to be at all scientific because I know there's no evidence out there for it. But in my experience, resilience is a pretty solid core characteristic that you can't change a ton. So I always went for the more resilient puppy. Always. If I had a choice, because I wanted one that if some bad thing accidentally happened, it wasn't going to crush them and it wasn't going to take them a long time to get over it and then get back on track with training.
And that's part of the reason why Quincy is here.
Quincy, she's a sweetie.
Quincy's our Rottweiler. Unexpected. Was not looking for a Rottweiler. And the breeder had contacted me asking me if she could bring the pups over for exposure.
Yeah, that was your first mistake right there to say yes.
Yeah, I know.
It's downhill from there.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at litter puppies.
We have a turkey vulture on the other side of the door. Can you hear her
I
knocking on the door?
did. I didn't know who it was. I don't open any doors around here.
Just like you don't drink. Don't I tell the story about don't drink out of that coffee cup?
Yeah, that was the
I'll
last
come back to
time.
Quincy.
That was the last time I was here. There was a coffee cup like this sitting on the table over here when I came in the morning.
Table right here.
Yeah, and Laura says to me, which a sentence I never thought anybody would say to me: "Don't drink out of that cup because there's a frozen mouse thawing out in there." Like, thanks so much. Now,
so now
I won't ever drink out of any cup.
Deb brings her own cup here all
It's
the time.
like, I bring my own cup or my own bottle. I'll open a bottle of water, and I will never open a door because Lord knows what's on the other side.
I could have said, "Don't drink out of that cup. There's a reinforcer in there, but it's not yours."
It was not mine. Definitely Willie's reinforcer going on there. So, things you don't think people will ever say to you.
I know.
So anyway, back to Quincy.
Back to Quincy. In resilience. So I wasn't looking for a dog. The possibility was floating around here somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyways, the litter of 11 puppies came back here to this room, which houses not just, but primarily parrots.
Mm-hmm.
And Quincy and Quincy was really resilient to all the sounds in here. She walked around, and that's when I was just like, bingo. That was the first spark.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
She sucked you in from that point on.
And she'll be 5 years old next week.
Mm-hmm.
And here she is 5 years later.
There you go. It's like, and you don't have to do a formal test to see something like that, like just your observations. And you could have her in the environment you knew she was going to be spending a lot of time in. Lots of times with litters of puppies, they're at the breeder, so it's going to be very different from what their lives are going to be like. So we have to look and try to see, I wouldn't say stress them, but expose them to something mildly unpleasant and see what their reaction is. What do they do? The typical thing we do is like open a big umbrella. Just suddenly open it and drop it in front of them. What do they do? Do they run away? And that's even okay because it's startling.
Sure.
Do they come back? You know, if there's the puppy who never comes back, that's not going to work. The puppies we pick are usually the ones who they're a little startled and then they run up and like jump on the umbrella and try to grab it. I'm like, that's the one. That's some resilience there. They saw something that startled them, but it didn't crush them. It didn't take them forever to get over.
Yeah.
And whenever I've tried to sort of fudge the test because I wanted a certain puppy and I wanted him to test better than he did, I've been wrong.
Gotta identify this reinforcer. Hang on. Yeah.
We'll see what's going on here.
Can't find it.
Is it my computer maybe?
It's usually,
Laura's being trained very, very well here.
I know.
That's a little negative reinforcement because he's screaming about something that he's looking at and she can't quite figure out what. And so she's moving all the different things to try to make that sound stop. So that's escape avoidance training. That's negative reinforcement. He's taught her to move things. Very well. You did really nicely at that.
I've been trained. Now here goes all the cocktails.
And what's the reinforcer there? It stops.
Yes, he has negatively reinforced me to move and move things.
Yeah.
And it works. But there's the tricky balance right now. Like, did I just reinforce the scream?
The screaming.
Yeah, because he knows now that I'll get up and move.
Mm-hmm. And move things. So, yeah, but on the other hand, you can't ignore that and just hope it goes away because it's clearly something that seems to be bothering him.
Yeah.
More than just vocalizing.
Yeah.
And reading that, knowing that, how you're reading the difference there between what's just random noise and what has a meaning for him, that communication. And if you just try to stop all vocalizations like people want to do, then you don't have that two-way communication going on.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Now he's whining. And with him,
my Lord.
here's the key in being specific with reinforcers. So I needed to identify the reinforcer behind the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So did you see what I did? I took 3 boxes and turned them upside down, because at the top of each box is a cavity. And with a bird, the more, so one is a Ziploc bag, the other one is plastic gloves to feed the vulture. The more those gloves and bags disappear, the bigger the cavity it looks like. The bigger a cavity, the more a nesting site.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So that's why I'm just like boom, boom, boom. I look for cavities, especially this time of year.
Wow. So moving those things so it's not agitating it.
Yeah.
Is the word.
But the reason I wanted to say that is if Eva's still on here, she's always like, be specific, Bob. That is, be specific behind the reinforcer. Is the reinforcer behind the screen the box? Not necessarily. It's the depth or the amount of cavity within the box.
Yes. Yeah. So you can't just say, oh, we got to move all boxes away, because that's not really the particular problem that you have there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, well, that's
very effective.
Huh?
He was very effective. He made you aware of the problem, and when you did what was necessary, then he reinforced you by stopping.
Well, now I'm trying to find an alternate behavior to redirect him to. In case he chooses he wants to scream because he noticed that I got up and moved towards
what
him.
What else could he be doing at this point in time?
I could tell him to go toss something, which what I'm going to do is reinforce as soon as he gets to that station. Oh, and he moved up beyond it. So I just want to show him that's what works.
Yeah.
But
it's something different. I broke my headphones. My dog is looking for the cockatoo. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, with that being said, Deb, we got a couple things we want to mention, but any last words on this topic?
What's the topic again?
What's the topic?
What's our topic again?
So a lot in our workshop we're going to be going in depth in reinforcers on numerous different species.
Yes.
There's a big section on working with positive and negative reinforcements, which is extremely very important.
Yeah, the whole negative reinforcement thing is not well understood, but it's really powerful. And sometimes you're using it without even realizing it. Oftentimes we can be using it without realizing it. Sometimes you purposely use it, but it's, again, got some fallout because it can be very unpleasant and it can induce frustration. So we have to be careful. And what we talked about yesterday was, I said, do we just go ahead and in here and throw in punishment too? But we decided if we talked about punishment in depth, that's taken up the whole day.
Yeah.
So we're going to mention
now need a 4-day workshop.
We're going to mention punishment very briefly, but we're not really, because our focus is on reinforcement-based training, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to stick with when we talk about it at the workshop. How can you change behavior using different reinforcement techniques?
And what we decided to do, too, is throughout the workshop, identify the punishers and aversives.
Right.
And
we
point them out.
When we see them, we can
because
point
they're
them
going to
out.
happen.
Yes.
And sometimes you have no control over them.
Right. And I've seen it, like, for example, once working with Cello, when he was in the middle of doing something and he was working very well, the roller pigeon, he just bumped his tail on something and that was it.
Yeah.
Punished, done. Like, not working here in this spot with this stuff anymore. It's like, in that, again, you had no real control over. It's just one of those things that happens sometimes. But knowing that's it, knowing that's the problem.
Identifying it.
Right. And picking up on those things. Whenever we see a behavior change quickly, we have to look at what's causing it. Why is that happening?
Identification is key.
Yeah. So,
and it's specific.
Yeah, even though the one last thing I think I would say is, even though I talk a lot about how important nature is and how important personality and temperament are, clearly we think things can be changed or we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. But we know it's not simple or easy to change something. So when somebody says, like, I have a quick question for you. How do I get my bird to stop vocalizing?
Yeah.
You're going, oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about here, and there's so much to understand in this whole area that we'd have to go into. It's not a quick or easy question.
Yeah.
Is it changeable? Sure it is. But it's going to take time and effort. And we like to do that because we're trainers. This is what we do. Not everybody likes to do that. It's not always fun for everybody. So people want the quickest route to changing behavior.
Absolutely.
And so that's something we need to consider.
Yep. And I will end with saying behavior is always happening. Training is always happening, whether you realize it or not. That animal can see, hear, smell, or feel you. You are training it whether you realize it or not. The key question is, what are you training it to do?
Very good. Perfect.
All right. Well, with that being said, I want to add in that here's the information on our upcoming workshop.
Yes.
This is 2 full days here at the Animal Behavior Center with myself and Dr. Deb Jones, October 13th and 14th.
Yes.
2 full days.
We are excited about it.
We
I'm
are
excited about it.
It's our very first time
working
presenting together.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of talk together a lot, but
Yeah.
we haven't actually worked together.
Yep.
And I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I think we both have different perspectives, different enough perspectives to add onto each other.
Sure. Yep. And I also want to state that if you want to get a hold of Deb, you can reach her. Her website is canineinfocus.com. And if you want to reach her personally, her email address is deb@canineinfocus.com. Yep. We're also going to put up her website. If you need to get a hold of me, you can always reach me at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. And my email address, laura@theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Please feel free to share this replay once it's done, because there's a ton of information in here. And let me see.
It's a tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, yeah,
It really is.
absolutely.
And what we have.
Just the tip of the iceberg. So if more about my services, you can sign up for our memberships, which are about working with species using applied behavior analysis, or our projects, species specific. Here's Deb Jones, Dr. Deb Jones, her website, Canine in Focus. So you can take a look at her upcoming schedule there.
Take a look at my blog. Feel free to sign up. Email notifications when I try to blog more regularly now.
Yes.
I'm trying to blog weekly, so yeah, sign up for that. They're kind of random topics, but they all have to do with training in some form or the other.
Yeah. So with that being said, Deb, thanks for attending another Coffee with the Critters.
Anytime.
Let's think about that morning radio show.
Oh my gosh. Afternoon radio show.
Afternoon radio show.
Yes.
And we hope to see you guys here at our workshop in October. And until then, thank you guys.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
It has been fun. Always fun with you, Deb. And we'll see you next week on Coffee with the Critters.
Excellent.
All right. See you, everybody.
Bye.